Teams, teamwork, high-performing teams. We hear a lot of words around teamwork, and I think we might all agree. Would you all agree that teamwork is essential in the workplace today? Show of hands, you agree with that? Yeah, so it's not new news that teams work, but think of the difference between football teams that chest bump and high five after 10 yards or a pass completion, and they didn't even score a point yet, and teams that don't celebrate or have measurement. So one of the things I'm convinced of is not that teams don't know, quote unquote, about teamwork, but most of them I've come across, and maybe you too, is they've never been measured. They don't know, how do we measure ourselves? So what I like to do is pull out a little one-page assessment I've done for years and have them rate themselves on a percentage scales. 10 means 100%, 9 is 90, 8 is 80. On these traits of teams, where do you think you currently stand? No names, just rate your team how you are as a group, whether that's 8, 12, etc. And when they do, they quickly get some collected data. And that data shows strengths and weaknesses. So scan down the list. What we'll often do is point out their top 3 scores, the highest things they score on, and often that's things like understand the goals, committed to the goals, and then you get to some of the lower ones, and we'll see, would you like to hear some of the lower scores? And sometimes those are things like confront conflict openly or candidly, and the score might be a 6 or 60%. How about another one, accountability? People follow through on their commitments and hold others accountable to those commitments. Lower scores. Recognition. So when you see those, you say, do team members have any control over those? So a couple quick case studies. Number one, automotive parts supplier, a technical team, test team that tests automotive parts. They were working together. They didn't know where they stand. We did an assessment. Long story short, they found out they had some tension, conflict on areas of communication and areas of understanding. Once I asked them, what do you guys think you could do? What do you think you can do to improve that score? They came up with the answers. I didn't have to tell them. And then we made a plan for them to hold to that. Fast forward, 6 years later, that team is 3 times the size it was. They had about 11 people back then. They've got over 30 now. And it's a flourishing team that's kind of divided into sub-teams since. So I'm proud of that team and the fact that they took their own advice and acted on it. Another quick case study. We had a team that was basically one leader of a large sales force, manager, and that manager was part of the problem. Let's say his bedside manner wasn't exactly user-friendly, and some people were either afraid of him or just didn't say anything around him, but there was definitely that undercurrent. So with that said, we did a 360 assessment on him. Now I'm sure a lot of you as leaders have done 360s, peer feedback, right? Get to know how you come across. And so we did that, and there's only 3 open-ended questions on that peer assessment. What should he keep doing that's working? What should he stop doing that's not as effective? And what's one thing he doesn't know that would probably be helpful for him to know about, or her? In this case, the one thing that was helpful for him to know about was when John drinks at social parties or events, it makes me uncomfortable. So I was the only one that was to provide that feedback to John. And I still remember John's comment. Who wrote this? They're spineless. They should come to me personally if they have an issue with something on my side. I said, whoa, wait a minute. This is a 360 anonymous assessment. If it wasn't anonymous, you think they would want you to know that? They wanted you to know that, but they didn't want you to know who. And the question is, if there's any truth in it, does that mean they're being helpful? They're just trying to help. So from high pressure and color in his face to taking a breath and realizing maybe there's a grain of truth in there, and accepting that feedback, owning it, and then realizing that he had some work to do on him. Fast forward today, 8 years later, I still know John, and he is a director now of a larger sales force of over 80 people. So if leaders are willing to own their team and their impact on teams, it will definitely have an impact on that team and how it comes across. So we have to ask ourselves, again, from teams to teamwork to high-performance teams, does measurement help? Absolutely, I believe it does.